first and foremost, let's just get this started with, have you ever thought about being a Peace Corps volunteer? Yeah? A couple hands, come on, loud and proud. Yeah. So for the rest of you who haven't put your hands up, you know all about the Peace Corps, everything that it does, the mission, and all that good stuff, right? Yeah. So if you imagine your life and say, hey, I want to join the Peace Corps, what does that mean to you? What does that look like? 2-year commitment, typically a third world country, which means not a lot of English. And your mission is to promote peace and friendship. Great idea, okay? I was just graduating college from CU. I had my Boulder, hippie, blood, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ready to take on the world. And I learned in college, I learned about myself. I'm a really good helper, and I thrive when I help, and I'm a really good problem solver, and I'm positive, and I've got California sunshine beaming out of my every orifice. So the Peace Corps was a really good idea for me. I knew what I wanted. So I applied, and it took a year. It took 1 year for me to go through the application process. It was really serious. How committed are you? Which gave me enough time to think about, why am I going to do this? Why am I going to subject myself to this? Why would I? And then I found myself asking a lot during that time, why not? I want to live in another country, and I want to learn another language, and I want to adventure. There's so much in the world for me to see. So after that year, anxiously waiting, I got the invitation. I knew exactly what I was going to go do. I was going to go promote peace and friendship and change the world and be a good helper. And I opened that envelope, and I got this. You're going to work with business centers, training centers, non-GMOs to do all that stuff. And I'm sitting here reading this after waiting a year, knowing I'm going to go do good. And all I can think after reading this is, Azerbaijan what? I couldn't even say it. I didn't know how to say the word. I didn't know that it was a country. I didn't know it existed. Azerbaijan. And did some research and found out that it was, in fact, on the other side of the world. Not only was it on the other side of the world, it had a population of roughly $8 million people. And for a point of reference, that's about the size of the population of New York City. So I was going to a country that was the size of New York City. That doesn't speak English. They don't speak English, and they are primarily a Muslim country. And in 2006, the United States administration didn't really have a good relationship with Muslim countries, if you recall. So I was off as a white, educated, blonde, white woman to the other side of the world, and it was exciting. Again, I was going to go do good. I was going to change the world. I was going to make it better. So we flew in, we got there, and there was a group of us. So the Peace Corps does send you out as a group. They do train you. You spend the first 3 months learning the culture, learning the language, okay? You walk into a country, and ay, Allah, salam alaikum, nejisan, nejisiz, hoshgamishtanis. What did you say? So we got there and couldn't understand anything and had to get used to the culture, had to learn the language. So culture shock, it's a thing. You get into another culture as an American who has all the wonderful things that we have, and suddenly you're in a place that has funny English words that aren't really meant to be English words. And you start to figure, okay, well, you know, the livestock just kind of meanders the roads, and there's trash on the side of the streets, and their translations aren't very good. So there was a very strong cultural difference. We didn't get it, and we adjusted as Americans, trying to make light of what this new country and its culture and its ways were all about. Azerbaijan is a post-Soviet country gaining its independence in 1996 for the second time. It is, like I said, 85% Muslim, but secular because it has money. Guess why? Oil. Right. So the history of Azerbaijan has turned it into a generation of people who only speak Russian, only read Cyrillic, and then they switched over into the Greek-based alphabet and that language. And so in learning the language in the first 3 months and learning the culture, all of a sudden I realized, holy cow, I don't really know how the world works. My purpose, what was my point of traveling out there in the first place? I'm going to go to a country and I'm going to change the world. I'm going to make it a better place. I'm going to show them what Americans are really like. I'm not anything special. I'm not some hot shot on the TV. I'm just an American who's really good at helping. I happened to be educated, and I happened to be good at learning languages. So we got out there. We had 3 months of training with a group, and after that 3 months, they spread us out. I happened to be the lucky one who got farthest away, which means nobody speaks English. They literally took me my whole life in a couple of bags, dropped me off, and said, good luck, yakshio. And so they dropped me off, and suddenly this was my house. This was my living condition, block Soviet housing. You don't have heated anything. You've got to work for your heat. So running water, nope. Toilets, nope. Doing your laundry every time, doesn't matter what the season is. So all of a sudden being an American was, I'm on the complete opposite side of, well, this is my life, this is my room. Simple, right? We don't need the heater. We've got stuff on our walls. So we put rugs on our walls. You get creative. I was clearly different. I clearly stood out. This is the place of which they said, okay, you're going to work here. It's a school. Same thing, very cold, very post-Soviet in its structure, and not the amenities that we're used to. Not only the amenities as in heat or running water, but also a structured activities, curriculums that focused on the healthy development of youth. We take advantage of things like organized sports. They didn't have that. As a Muslim country, people thought it was taboo and it was not appropriate for women to participate in sports. And we stood out as the Americans. We stood out. Ever know what it feels like to be a minority? Ever know what it feels like to be judged because your skin is a different color or your hair is a different color? Okay, we're in our comfort bubble as Americans, and then you stop and think, hey, look around. How many people are coming here in a country they've never spoken the language, they don't know the culture, and all they want to do is good? So that's what I was doing, and we stood out. We stood out very much. But I was there, and I was saying, 27 months, you got to make light of it. It's hard when you can't talk to people, especially when you like to talk. So I found that the relationships that I began to build were the people who weren't afraid to talk to the different-looking person. They weren't afraid to ask questions or butcher their English in attempt to bridge that relationship. And so I had primarily young women. And in a Muslim country that was secular in the way it was, and coming from a post-Soviet leadership, there was a lot of women are baby makers, food preparers, house cleaners, and they go to school and that's it. They don't do any, that's the only purpose for these women. And then you have me coming in like, hold the brakes, hold on. They asked simple things like, what is this stuff? Oh, it's floss. What is floss? How do you explain what floss is in another language that you've never spoken before? So you found that despite being in another country and being a complete minority, there are people who want to learn, who want to connect, who want to experience the culture. And so that's what I focus a lot of my time. We have what's called the white man's burden as Americans. We have all this money, all this power, all this influence, and then we go to all these other countries, and here you go, here's all this money, power, and influence. Why don't you be better? Right? We impose this help when really we should just shut up and listen. What do you need? What's going to make your life, your world better? How can I make this a better place for you? So it started with food. One of those things that don't have cultural boundaries. Food is food is food. It's good or it's not good. Doesn't differentiate where you're from. You either like it or don't. So we started, one of the most frequently asked questions is, what is your traditional food? And I'm like, oh gosh, what is our traditional food in America? I think that's it. Burgers? Thanksgiving. I got that one, so. But they wanted to, well, what does pizza taste like? What do tacos taste like? So we start to connect on levels that are not superficial. I like food, you like food. We can connect in that. And so I taught these girls how to make pancakes. They love pancakes in Azerbaijan. And they taught me chai. You are not going to have any friends if you don't drink chai with people at least 5 times a day, minimum. So that's how they would make tea. They would heat it up, and you can see kind of the steam or the smoke coming out, but they would use fire. They would warm up the water and chai. Drink. And that was a cultural thing. And then I exchanged my culture. It's like, hey, we play this game. It's going to help you get better at English and spelling. It's called Scrabble. Try teaching that in another language. So the young women were the ones who were mostly held back and held back because of tradition, because of culture. It's not appropriate for women to go out at night. It's not appropriate for women to wear clothes that expose their knees or their shoulders. Even if it's 200 degrees outside, do not expose. So here comes the Californian who plays soccer and is very, very outspoken. And I'm coming in here and saying, well, ladies, there's lots of things that I can see in relation to what my country considers a clean place, a good place, what's developed, what's right, and then what your country does. So first and foremost, that white man's burden, we can do it better, we have the influence, the power, the money, etc. So that was a stereotype that I was commonly misunderstood to have. Oh, you're American? Money, 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 money. Give me your money. I'm a volunteer. You must misunderstand the word of volunteer. I had a $400 per month stipend, and that was it. Okay? Think about that. How easy is it to live off of $400 anywhere? So that was the cost of living, and their common methodology of disposing of trash was this. They burned it. That's a school. And it stuck to your hair. So I found these. And I found these things where I could say, hey, why don't we work on your recycling? Why don't we work on making your world a better place? Whoa, 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 whoa. American, don't come in here and tell us what's going to make our place better. Shut up and listen. And so I started to see things that really upset me. And I started to experience things that really upset me. Those are foxtails, but take this in. Because that's like putting bubble gum in a cigarette and selling it to children. So I saw these things, and I started asking questions, and I said, well, what's going to make your place better? What's going to make your world better? How can I do good? Well, we want to learn English. Nobody's ever taught us English, so not having English as a second language is a very big disadvantage if you're not American. And not only that, I recognized, holy cow, I as an American am very, very blessed to be born into speaking English. Try teaching English. Not easy. So they wanted to learn, and again, it was primarily young women who had been held back and told, no, you're not going to amount to anything other than a baby maker, a food preparer, house cleaner, and you finish school, and that's it. So these young women were the ones that eventually I started working with together and said, okay, let's do some programs that work on and take influential men, influential leaders in your community. I can talk to them. I'm not afraid of them. You shouldn't be either. Okay? Chief of police, right there. How can I support what you're doing? We ran a class, and not only did we run classes, but in running those classes, I trained teachers. This is an entire room of teachers that didn't understand if you smoke cigarettes, this is what your lungs look like. If you drink alcohol, this is what happens to your liver. They didn't understand that. So I worked with the leaders, the young women who were craving, they were hungry to learn more, to have opportunities, to be better than just their tiny little town and their tiny little country on the side of the world. And these teachers all then went into schools and taught the fifth graders, this is what happens when you smoke cigarettes. Look at your lungs. And we took the most graphic pictures that you could get off of DARE and pretty much reincarnated the DARE program in Azerbaijan on a smaller level. And that turned into something that's still happening today. Those teachers have sustained that to a place where they are pushing it into a programming that continues to go in the schools and says, this is what happens to your lungs when you smoke cigarettes. Oh, by the way, this is what happens to your wife's lungs when you smoke cigarettes and the baby inside her. So don't, because they're going to look like those black rocks. So the next thing was that whole sports. Muslim country, women participating in sports, not appropriate. We really want to play sports, okay? Think about what the effects of being on a team, on a sports team, do for a child's development, teamwork, communication, commitment, right? All of these skills that we know and understand, non-existent. Hey, your children will be healthy if they run around and play sports. Your children will have fun. They'll develop teamwork skills. They'll be able to communicate. They'll be able to show a level of commitment. And girls didn't play soccer. And it took my first year of playing soccer with all of the men in that community to model to those girls, hey, this is really fun. After my first year, it got to a point where I had built credibility. I was there. I learned the language, and I will tell you right now, when you go to a place where nobody speaks English, you learn the language, or you don't talk. So after my first year, I did build this credibility, and I did have a opportunity to start working with higher leaders and develop programs that are still implemented and operational today. But I had an incident where the hardware store clerk right next to my house, every day I would pass his hardware store, very familiar face, very familiar person. I went in there to get a chain for my bike, just a chain. Go in there, it's me, it's him, we're alone, and it's a hole in the wall, and he gives me this one chain, it's not strong enough, it's just measly, I can pull it apart. I asked for a stronger chain. He gives me a stronger chain. He says, here, come back here. I think I have some chains back here. Just me, just him, hole in the wall hardware store. I have this chain in my hand. He disappears out of my peripheral. The next thing I know, this man is wrapping his arms around me as if he's going to do something about it. And in a state of shock and reaction and a giant chain in my hand, whip it down, yell no, and shaking myself, walk to the nearest familiar place and frantically looking, how do I look up? I got attacked. This man touched me and I didn't like it in my dictionary. As I'm frantically doing that, there happened to be an off-duty police officer. He heard the whole thing, and long and short was going to take this man to jail, and I had the option to press charges, and instead I took the opportunity to tell his wife and his mom. Because as soon as he realized, oh shoot, what did I do? Please, don't make me go to jail. I have a baby at home. I mean, he went from, I'm gonna own you, to crying on his knees, please, no. Okay, well, I wanna talk to your wife and I wanna talk to your mom. And so the police officer that had helped me leans over and in broken English, that is worse. Yep. So I did. I told his wife, I told his mom. And you better believe in that community, there were never any issues again. Because despite how women are looked at, treated, objectified, behind every strong man is a stronger mom. And so I learned that pretty quick. And as I had a choice at that point, quit, be angry, give up, or I got to, you know what, I think I'm going to empower and educate only the women. And so I did, because they were the ones who were being held back, and they were the ones that were being told, you can't play sports, you can't do this, you can't be smarter than anything that is out of the house. And they believed it. And it wasn't until things like me telling on mom, telling on this guy, that these young women started to come out and really, really felt comfortable and were empowered. And so, you know, being in the Peace Corps is about sharing that passion, sharing that what you're good at. And not being afraid of just jumping into the unknown. And I feel like when it comes to purpose, especially with travel, it usually is defined in retrospect. My purpose wasn't to learn a second language. My purpose was to become proficient in a language, to bridge that conversation gap so that I can empower these women to do better and have more opportunity. Lots of things you don't see in America, but you see there. And so you get used to the culture, you get used to the way, and you find that you get creative. And when I came back home, I found that serendipity had brought me back together with others who experienced what I experienced. When you're in the Peace Corps, you do and live a different life. And you're disconnected from all the American luxuries that we have. But through friendship, through beating through barriers of fear and knowing that being humble and making a fool out of yourself really will connect you to others who are trying to connect. And ultimately, the end result is empowering through education and support and showing that you can be more than what just this small bubble teaches you. And I moved back to the Roaring Fork after this experience, and how many people here don't look like us and don't sound like us or are from another country, and all they want to do is good. And so I make a point of it to be that bridge and to reach out and say, hey, you know, I know you're different, but we both like food, right? We both like sports, right? So when I say serendipitous energy has come with the Peace Corps Volunteer Network. A couple years ago, I met an individual who was working with the Forest Service and has an incredible history of traveling the world and doing service work abroad. And we happenstance just found out, oh, you were a Peace Corps volunteer? I was a Peace Corps volunteer. You were a Peace Corps volunteer in the 80s? I wasn't alive. I was a Peace Corps in 07, 08. And there's a bond that brings us all together as Peace Corps volunteers, or now returned Peace Corps volunteers. And this individual, this friend, this former volunteer from Honduras, mind you, he had an opportunity to circle back from the Peace Corps as a volunteer, but then as a country director. And I asked him, I said, Mike, what's the purpose with traveling? What's the purpose of leading Peace Corps volunteers? And so he's in Ecuador right now. He's in Quito. He used to be one of the main guys of the White River National Forest. So he has a lot of work running National Forest, but as well, he also has a passion in development and economic development specifically. So I asked him to say a couple words, and I think we got him in from Quito, Ecuador, which is a couple hours away from us, but I think 2 hours difference. But we Skyped him in and asked for him to say a couple words.
Can you hear me? Test?
Oh, we can hear
Test.
you, but now we can't see you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Greetings from Quito. Thanks for having me, Katie. This is a unique opportunity, and it's good to get back in touch with the folks in the Roaring Fork area. So, when I realized when I got to know Katie and we realized we were both returned Peace Corps volunteers, or RPCVs as we call ourselves, there's an immediate connection, because no matter what country that you serve in, it's unique. There's something about fellow returned Peace Corps volunteers. So thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit about my experience. So I was just going to mention a little bit about what drew me to Peace Corps, both as a volunteer and now as a country director managing the program in Ecuador. A lot of analogous stories that Katie had mentioned, but kind of a foundation is that I've always been very lucky to work for organizations where the employees, my fellow employees, had a passion. That includes the Forest Service there in the White River National Development for about 8 years, and that, talk about travel with a purpose. I was able to live back in Honduras again, Dominican Republic and Guatemala for a total of 8 years, and was able to raise my kids there, which was an amazing experience that I was able to provide them. But that for me, it's very important to work for an organization, work with people that have a passion. So that's kind of the something that I've been very lucky to experience. As far as kind of the background, the foundation, I've always had good examples with my family with regards to service. Went to high school that required service programs. All that was the foundation for kind of a confluence of opportunities that came together. So after I finished college, I majored in wildlife and fisheries biology. Just things started coming together. I knew I wanted adventure after college. I knew I wanted to learn another language. I had been to Mexico and Honduras a couple times in high school, and I just kind of fell in love with the culture, the cultures of Mexico and Honduras. And then by happenstance, I met a couple people, not significant in my life necessarily, but they had the right message at the right time. I met a returned Peace Corps volunteer who was in one of my Spanish classes my last year in college, and he had just come back from, I don't remember what country, but he introduced the idea to me. And then a fellow who was he was actually my scuba instructor. He said, "Yeah, I'm joining Peace Corps, and I'm going to Honduras and going in fish culture." And I thought, wait a minute, I've studied Spanish and I got a degree in fisheries. I could probably do that. And all of a sudden, it's kind of seemed within reach. So I did apply for the Peace Corps. It took almost a year, like with Katie's experience, and they offered me Honduras. And I thought, wow, that sounds adventurous, because if you remember what was happening in Central America in the 80s, all of the countries around Honduras were at war. So that added a little bit to the adventure. But it was an amazing, amazing life-changing experience. I was an extensionist, kind of like a county extensionist, but teaching people how to cultivate fish, how to grow fish in ponds. I didn't have any electricity. I had water once a week. I dealt with the stairs. Some of the communities that I went to, it had never seen a white person. I was in a pretty remote area. But the cultural exchanges were amazing. It took me about 6 months to kind of feel comfortable. That cultural exchange is probably the most important part. The three goals of Peace Corps are helping technically, but the second and third goals of Peace Corps have to do with exchanging of culture in both directions. So sometimes I would visit one of my farmers and we would spend 2 hours talking and eating and playing guitar, and he was showing me his beehive, and then after about 2 hours we would start talking about the business at hand, which was the fish. So, but that was very typical. I worked with women's groups, women's cooperatives, to empower them economically also. And the first hour, people were usually late for about the first hour, and then you start talking the next hour, and then you start the meeting. So, but that was part of getting to know folks. You took advantage of that time. So it's important to realize, both from what I just said and what Katie said, that Peace Corps isn't about money. It's not providing money. It's providing the most precious resource that the U.S. has, and that's its people. So now as a country director, what attracted me there was, I remembered that passion, and I had the opportunity. All of a sudden, it kind of became within reach, and I had support to take that chance, and why not? I had the support of the Forest Service through Scott Fitzwilliams. Perhaps you know him. He's the forest supervisor, and he was my supervisor. And it was great to work again with, and as I always have, with very passionate people, both not only the Ecuadorians that make up my staff, but also the Peace Corps volunteers. And they, let me give you 3 very, very short stories that emphasizes that passion. When we do site assignments towards the end of training, I remember we have a youth and families program that works with the most disadvantaged of the population. And we were given the site assignments, and we told this one soon-to-be volunteer is finishing his training. We said, okay, you're going to be working in this very marginal, poor community. You have to be careful out in the community because of the crime. You're going to be working with folks that have drug addiction, all of the most disadvantaged single mothers that are having the toughest time that you could imagine. And the reaction from the volunteer was like, perfect. This is perfect. This is exactly what I wanted. They were assignments and conditions and work that most people would cringe or shy away from. Yet we have our young population, in this case, this young man who was about 23, and he was so excited to serve in that situation. Another short story was at the end of the service, we have a bell ringing ceremony where it basically closes out their service, and they literally ring a bell. And we have all the staff there. We have their counterparts, the people with whom they've been working. And to see these folks, these volunteers who perhaps didn't speak a lick of Spanish at the beginning, and now they're completely fluent. And we see the counterparts and the Ecuadorian staff with tears in their eyes and thanking them for helping their country and serving their country. It's amazing. And the last little story is, about 2 years ago, when I went to the Peace Corps training in Washington, I got in the taxi at Washington National Airport to go to the Peace Corps office, the headquarters. And the first 5-10 minutes, there was no talking. And then this taxi driver, he was from East Africa, as I found out later. But when I said the address was the Peace Corps office, he just starts gushing with these stories. And he goes, oh, my English teachers were Peace Corps volunteers. And he starts naming them as if he remembered them yesterday. But he was about my age. It had been about 30 years. And he mentions their name, and he talks about them like it was yesterday. And he said what an influence that they had on his life. And then when we got to the Peace Corps office, he looked out the window and he got out of the car and he looked at it like it was one of the monuments, like the Taj Mahal or the pyramids of Egypt, because he thought so much of the Peace Corps because of the influence it had on his life. So those experiences, those recollections really make me realize that how important the Peace Corps is. And it's amazing. It makes the difference in people's lives, not only in the countries, but the Peace Corps volunteers and the Peace Corps employees that work in the Peace Corps offices in the countries. It's amazing, and it's changed my life. I still keep in touch with my fellow volunteers. We just had our 30th Peace Corps reunion, which was amazing. So it's amazing, and it's an opportunity to live in a different country, to really get into the culture and to learn what makes the people tick, and to promote peace in the end. So hopefully that fit the bill, Katie.
A couple things. If you are in the back and you are standing, there are several seats up front here, and if you guys want to come in, maybe if you guys could scooch in to make room, we could get some more folks in here. There's lots of folks standing, and there's lots of room. So if you folks want to come in, I will try to buy you some time by talking for about 10 seconds. But there are some seats up here. So I also want to thank Willetstown Center, who's another one of our sponsors, for being here and for making this possible. So thank you to them for having all of this and for and sponsoring this. So our next speaker is known to probably many of you for his work in the construction industry here in town, and he's a really passionate guy about building and creating beautiful homes and communities. But I sat down with Bryant Reagan a few months ago, and we chatted, and it really struck me that he's a unique individual in the fact that he has created an incredible synergy between all of his passions, both personal and professional. And when we were putting together this Travel with Purpose discussion this evening, I realized that Bryant had to be a part of it. And of course, we were lucky that he said yes. So let's get Bryant up here to talk a little bit about the work that he's doing with his company and the work overseas.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for allowing me to be here tonight. And I just want to give thanks to Ryan and his staff here. And just Ryan's a great guy, and I just appreciate everything he's done. Just looking around, just seeing this. So if you would give him a hand, it's a phenomenal job. Phenomenal. And then I just want to give a shout out to my amazing wife who's standing in the back. You probably should have had her speak. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Maybe next time, right? And my three boys back there, Brooks, Caleb, and Titus. Awesome. I love this event because I'm looking around. I didn't expect to see so many kids here, so I love the fact that our youth and our kids are able to come to an event like this and just be involved. And so it's such an important part of our community, which is one of the things I want to talk about building community. And I think the premise for that from me is just better together. I think everything that we do, we're better together, and the more we realize that, the more we start to thrive. And a little background on me, I grew up in North Carolina, so if you hear a word come out that you don't understand, that's probably why. There's a little accent comes out every now and then. But I moved here about 25 years ago, and just been in the construction industry all my life. Since I was about 14, I was involved, I don't even know if that was legal, but I was involved in construction at some point, either on the side or whatever it was. But so I've really been engaged in that all my life and educated in it as well. But just always had a passion for that, for building things, and I love seeing that in my kids too, as they're growing up. But I wanted to start and talk about some key principles and in some of the things of our company that have really, our company's been founded upon and has been thriving because of it. And just wanted to start out, just talk about community building. And when I'm mostly what I want to talk about is not just the physical building, but the relational aspect of building and how key and important that is to our community and our lives, personally, individually, corporately, and so forth. And so one of the things for us is we love just pioneering things. We love the fact we come alive when we get to think about pioneering things. And I'll get more into that in a little bit, just about how that came about, but that's one of our company philosophies, just about pioneering a way forward and just passionate about building community. Some of those keys, like I said, one is just building community. And I think in this valley, and most of you would probably agree, that we face probably an epidemic of people becoming isolated. They tend to isolate themselves, and that's an opposite reaction of what we see that does not foster a healthy community. And we have kind of an epidemic in this valley. Many of you may know about the suicide rate and things like that. It's one of the highest in the nation. And there's a reason for that. And one of those reasons is isolation. There's many others, but isolation is one of those. And so we're really passionate about building relationship and community. And one of those ways to bring us all together to do things, but one of those ways is just drawing people out of the isolation. Mentoring was one of the big things for me. I had mentors that came into my life, thanks to the prayers of my wife, that men came into my life and started mentoring me and started showing me these things. And when I grew up, I didn't have people mentoring me. You know, it was just, you know, I looked around and saw what all the bigger guys were doing, and I followed those guys, but they weren't really speaking life into me. And so when these men came into my life, they started showing me, you know, healthy ways for community, healthy ways to build into this particular community and globally. And we'll talk about that a little bit too. But I think that is something that's radically missed in our society, is just the fact of mentoring. And one of the things that I do now is I mentor men weekly on multiple occasions, and I love doing it. And it's not just not just, you know, for the intent of personal enjoyment or anything like that, but I love seeing other men come alive. And I think that's a critical piece of our own individual health, but mainly the community health. And so I just want to encourage us. One of the things I would encourage us in tonight is just how much comes out of us mentoring others. And we can't say enough how important that and how key that is to building healthy community here in Basalt. And one of the other things is just, you know, coming out of their gifts and desires and aligning them with what they can do. And a lot of people don't understand what that is. And so I've really been able to experience that on a personal level, but also watch other people experience that as well. And some of the joys in my life have been able to watch people come alive, right? When they have other men tell them, hey, you can do this, you can do that. Hey, this is what I see you being able to do. And a lot of us aren't able to see that or even speak that over ourselves because we don't want to, for one, we don't see it, and two, we're not sure how to articulate it, perhaps. The next key thing that I think is radical, a paradigm shift to our culture, is building a selfless community. This is a big one for me because I think for our community and for our country, we see that, and all this, I'm going to bring this together at the end, but we see how it's such a me culture, right? I mean, it doesn't take long for us to recognize that, to see that shift has taken place, and it's a very entitled culture, and there's reasons for that, but something happens when we first take an approach of a selfless. It's selfless. My approach to community. It's not about me. It's not about what I want, and I want to build a community of selflessness. Not a bubble community, but a humble one, right? We live in such a bubble here sometimes, right? I mean, everybody knows the statement. I've never went past a roundabout, right? If you were in Aspen, people struggle to get past a roundabout. Well, now we have a roundabout in Basalt, all right? More than one, actually. Old Town and New Town here, right? Old Town and Willits. And so we just have to, again, beware of being isolated and being selfish in a lot of things. And I just say that from my own experience. One of the funny stories about when me and my wife got married, and I was a late bloomer. We didn't get married until I was 36. And one of the funny things about that is I just realized how selfish I was. We both said, man, I didn't realize I was so selfish. And then we thought we had all that gone. Then we had kids. And I was like, man, it's still there. Some of it's still there, and we just had to work through that. And I think that's something that we all battle against, right? Is that selfishness. But I love hearing the stories in the previous talk that just the selflessness, and we just saw a heroic. This wasn't part of the talk, but a heroic act of that in California yesterday, right? With the officer that went into the bar in that shooting. He made the choice to be selfless before he went into that bar. He made that choice when he took that job. And we've got so many brave men and women around the country that may have made that choice. And we have an opportunity to do the same rather than be selfish. And I think, there's a longing in every one of our hearts. There's two longings. One of those is me, me, me. And there's another one that's maybe even more subtle that is us, us, us. And I think that longing of us I know that longing of us needs to overcome that longing of me, and we need to fight that. And it's a battle that we all deal with, right? The other thing about selfless is that we can have a negative approach or negative attitude towards something, and make negative comments about something, or positive. And everybody knows which one of those builds things up. So if we're talking about building community, we know which one of those are going to build things up. And so, for one of the things for us and for our business, and we deal with clients from all over the world, different cultures, different backgrounds, different affluence, and it's just amazing what you have to be prepared for, relationally. And so that's been a blessing to us because we've been able, it's made us more rounded in how we can handle certain situations. But it's also become a joy because we get to learn from those people. And many of you guys maybe in the room have heard of Rick Warren, The Purpose-Driven Life is a book that he did. There's a reason why that book was a #1 bestseller of all time in all of history. It sold over 60 million copies. Is because each one of us have a desire to know what our purpose is. And unless we find that purpose, we're not able to really step into our role in the community to build a healthy community. And the reason that book, and the reason Rick's book was so popular was because every one of us longed to know, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? And one of the key things with that is, I think, starting out with taking that step of saying, I'm going to be selfless. Selfless, it's a starting point, it's not an ending point. And that's a key thing for my life that I realized finally. It wasn't until later on in life that I realized that, I need to take a selfless approach. It's not about me. And that's one of the key things in Rick's book. It's not about me. And bridge building is my next topic, but this one, again, this is relational, and I love that she said that in the last talk, is about building a bridge in the community. And building bridges are there. I mean, it's a metaphorical example of the in and out into a community. And if we don't have bridges relationally in the community, then what we have is a one-way, my way or the highway attitude, right? And so we have to build bridges into the community. And one of those ways that I'm passionate about, my team is passionate about, by the way, I didn't give a shout out to some of our guys, Jeff Claflin in the back, he's one of our project managers, and Andrew Smith, project manager as well. So those guys, they're passionate about as well. The reason they came on board with us is that they see the value in this. They see the value in giving their lives and pursuing something more and something greater and building bridges in the community. And one of the things that they do really well and that I love is getting involved in the community. Every one of these, all of us are involved in the community every week. This is not a one time a year, I'm going to go out and mow somebody's lawn. Those are great. Those are awesome starting points. But one of the things we love and are passionate about is involvement, right? Involvement in our community in so many different levels. So I hope that everyone is encouraged to get involved, especially seeing the growth in this community. that's taking place. Not only locally, but globally, building these relational bridges. So getting involved to serve locally and globally. Some of the fun things that I was able to do when I met my wife, when we first met, she was training for a marathon for Challenge Aspen. Many of you may know Challenge Aspen here locally in the valley, making possibilities for people with disabilities. And one of our really good friend, dear friend, Houston Cowan, the CEO and founder of Challenge Aspen, he's now gone on to start Challenge America, much more broader country, nationwide movement there, helping people with disabilities. And so one of the fun things we got to do was run a marathon, which I am not a runner. I mean, if you look at me, I'm just not a runner, And she was training for this run, and she said, "Well, if you want to hang out with me, you need to run." I said, "Oh gosh." So here I am off the couch, and I run a first training run with her that's 5 miles long, and I'm a mountain biker and a skier. Okay, I'm not a runner, long distance especially, and but I did it. I ran with her, I trained with her, and we ran a marathon in Lausanne, Switzerland, and with 50 people from Aspen. And so through relationship building, through getting involved in the community and serving in that capacity, we were able to build relationships that have lasted a lifetime, and we're still growing those relationships. And at the same time, we're able to really serve our local community and all the others. Aspen is a melting pot, as you know. We touch people from all over the world. And the amazing ability that we have, we hear stories all the time. We're also leaders at our church in Aspen, Crossroads Church in Aspen. And we have people coming in from all over the world, and we hear people come back, and they give us testimony after testimony of how their lives have been changed by this community. Now, you guys don't get to hear that all the time, but we get to hear those things from people all the time, and that's so encouraging and we don't realize sometimes how big of an impact we have and influence we have on the rest of the world. But being a melting pot, we get to do that. We touch lives all over the world. And so that really excites us. And not only that, but we've built relationships with them here that now we get to go and visit them there. Which takes me into my next point, just about mission building. Mission building is something that I feel like is core to and critical to every one of us in our health, in our growth, is going on mission. And you just heard an amazing story about the Peace Corps. So many similarities there with different culture and different things. And you go to these places, when we have teams that we've sent to India and Pakistan. They've lived in Afghanistan, among the Taliban and other areas. Just incredible stories I can't even share with you because this will be online. South Africa, Africa. I mean, you go on down the list of places that we're able to go into, and we're sending teams right now into India and Kathmandu to start a medical clinic in areas where they don't even have health care. They don't even know good dental hygiene and simple basic things, and so able to go in and help people in these regions. But the classic thing that people tell you about mission building, I think anyway, most people when they come back, when they go on their first mission, they think they're going to help somebody. But the biggest thing when they come back is they realize the impact it had on their own heart was greater. They feel like that was greater than any impact they had on anyone else. And so it's not just a one-way street, it's a two-way street. And it's such a community building thing for us to be active and involved in mission and going to other regions, other places, even here locally. We can't overlook that in terms of building up our community and the health. And something happens in us that makes us stronger when we go and come back, right? And so I think being engaged is such an important part. Again, sometimes we want to, depending on, obviously, also depending on different seasons of the year here living in this region, is that we tend to be recluse. And that's a battle we have to fight and be more engaged with people in our community. Some cool things about the missions. I'm going to show you a few pictures here that I think are awesome. This is my wife Becca in the bottom picture in Malawi, Africa. Spent some time there for an extended trip, and the stories she'll tell you about the time that she had. She was still when she gave me these pictures yesterday for this slide. She was almost tearing up just remembering the joy and the faces of these young boys chasing behind her every time she came into the village. And I think she's tearing up now. I can see her back there. She'll cry up almost anything sometimes. No, especially these things though. But just a beautiful impact that it had on her life, and I know those kids too. You know, if you were to show these kids that picture, they would probably well up and cry too. Say, "Oh, I remember her." You know, she such a beautiful smile, dimples. Yeah, exactly. This is another picture. This is Jeff, one of our project managers, and Jeff is in South Africa. On the top left, that's in South Africa. On a trip he went down a couple of years ago, and just some of the other. I mean, the intense photo on the right, just him pouring into this kid's life, just telling. I mean, I can just almost hear what he's saying, right? That changed that kid's life. Changed his life forever, you know. So that's amazing. Sorry, now I'm tearing up when I'm talking about tears. And then also helping, you know, on some construction and just jumping in there and using his skills and his abilities. I don't know why he doesn't do that now, but I'm just kidding. And this is Andrew. Andrew just got back from an amazing trip in Vietnam and other regions in Asia. Man, these guys were carrying Bibles to people who were just hungry. They never even had a Bible. They can't get them in this area. It's communist areas, and they're not even allowed into the country, so they're smuggling things in. And I don't know if I should have said that online, but anyway, just an amazing trip. Several people on this photo on the left from Aspen as well. Just an incredible opportunity, incredible time. And now Andrew came back, what was that, a couple of weeks ago now, and last week, and just his heart, he's on fire, you know. He just can't stop smiling and talking about his trip and just the connection that some of these guys had. And then this is me, obviously a few years younger without a beard. On the bottom right, I'm the one on the right, not the left, in case you're asking. That's my friend Sean in South Africa. And we've been down several times to South Africa and Joburg and Durban and Cape Town. And man, we got to go to a little village. And again, they told us we were the first white people to ever come to that village. It was 8 hours north of Joburg, right on the border of Botswana. And we were able to go in and talk about sacrifice. These guys came, and they don't have much money. They came in and they laid out a spread, a table as long as this stage, and just full of food. I can't even tell you what it was. I do know we ate worms. We ate what's called Infante worms that are like little grub worms that were dry and crunchy. You know, they grow they hang out on these trees and they fall, and then they dry them out. Anyway, lots of protein, crunchy. Better enjoy that food over there tonight because it's a little better. But in those cultures, you know, you can't turn down the food. You have to eat. It's disrespectful to turn down the food, right? And plus, they spent their whole, maybe they saved up a whole year for that meal. So just how grateful and how excited they are to see people like us coming and serving and giving and building up in their communities because they don't have the resources we do. They don't have. No, I'm not talking about finances. You know, the worst thing we can do is come in with our finances. And another worst thing we do is come in and tell them how to do everything, right? They have their own cultures that we don't know anything about. We can learn about them more and more, but they still have different way of life. And we need to just support them and encourage them and build relationships with them. That's the key, building relationships. You know, one of the things we found in construction and in the church and so many different ways in our community is that it's not about me just giving one thing or giving of my time here or there without building a relationship. If I don't build the relationship, then everything crumbles, right? And then everything ends. And so the more we can build relationship that's long-lasting and healthy, the stronger we're all going to be, and the healthier we're all going to be. So those are some pretty cool shots there. I wish I could have shared more. The one on the top left is Haiti. I was in Haiti right after the earthquake, the big massive earthquake that happened several years ago. And it was just total devastation. You look out, it looked like a nuclear bomb went off and just rubble everywhere. And they had one little excavator out in the middle of that field. It looked like it was out in the sea all by itself because they just didn't have the resources. And they had one guy out there just, I'm like, this is going to take forever. And I think most of it still looks about like this. Because, and dead bodies were still underneath. This was 6 months after the earthquake, and still dead bodies everywhere underneath, all the concrete and everything. But they don't have the resources to know how to pour concrete correctly. They pour this stuff so weak, and they use such thin rebar that when the earthquake happened, everything just collapsed. And so, for one, they don't have the money to build those things because of corruption and other things in these countries. Because a lot of money went into Haiti, but a lot of it got stuffed away by corruption. And so the more we can teach them on the ground how to do certain things, and when they're empowering them to be better and healthier communities. Wow, there's so many other photos I'd like to show you. Here's one. We got to go with a group of men. We got to go on this safari, and that's how. We're in an open vehicle, no protection, with a lion. A tribe of lions are actually just hanging out right there, and the guy said, "Hey, whatever you do, don't stick your arm outside of the vehicle." He said, because they'll see that, and they'll come up and they'll yank your arm off, and you're done. Just in another lion park just outside of Joburg, there were some tourists that came in, and I love South Africa. For one, there's no protection. Right? You drive your car inside this lion park, okay? There's no zoo like we have here in the U.S. where you got cages and things and rails everywhere. They would have no rail and a lion sitting down there, and they say, well, if you're dumb enough to jump down there, then you're going to get eaten. So this tourist group drove through the lion park, and it has signs posted everywhere, do not roll your windows down, right? So you're just driving through, and there's lions roaming. Well, this tourist was hanging out the window taking pictures, trying to get a better picture, and a lion came up and ripped his arm off and just ate him. This was a week before we were there. So I was feeling pretty good about being in the open back of a vehicle with just a roll cage and no glass or anything. We actually got chased by elephants on that trip too. I thought they would have crushed our vehicle, but fortunately, our driver was crazy. And here's my lions, my boys that are excited. I just one of the things that I missed out on life was all of this I just described to you at a young age. And, I think the earlier we can get our kids and get kids plugged into community and engage in these ways in a healthy way and mentoring them even at a young age. There's a stat out there that says a kid needs about 7 other healthy people speaking into his life to be successful in life, not just his parents. And that's something that I missed out on, and so many other people missed out on. It doesn't mean that there's no hope for us, but it's just such a much healthier approach to raising kids. And I just encourage you, find somebody that you can, not give your kids to, but date night is, you've got there's 7 people there that you can have 7 date nights a month. So I just encourage us to pour into them, pour into our kids, and we've had such an amazing blessing to expose our kids to some of these things. And one of our goals as a company, by the way, is that each year we shut down. And I don't know if everybody can do this, every company in business, but I would encourage us to at least move that direction. Is that we focus on 1 to 2 weeks a year closing down our business and going on mission together as a team. And what that does is that we get to experience something radical together, and we have a bonding experience that we can share about and talk about for life. And that you can't take that, nobody can take that away, right? Nobody can take that away. And, like I said earlier, for me, unfortunately, I didn't start down this path till later on in life when my wife came into my life and introduced me to Christ. And that was a radical shift for my life, is understanding that, wait a minute, there is purpose. I do have a greater purpose than doing all these other things that are not really building me up or building others up either. And so it was a radical shift from me in my life to start to have all these things take place. And it's radically impacted our business. I can't tell you the relationships we've built with clients that they will fly us on their private jets. They'll come give us their car if we want their car. They say, hey, just take it. Hey, come stay and live in my house for 4 months if you want to, if you need a place to stay. They invite us on trips with them. The relational piece of that, dinner together. I mean, it's just so amazing how it breaks walls down in a relational way. And I'll finish on this. Wall building, I mean, most of us see that today, culturally what's going on in the media and stuff, and we think of wall building as something different, but I wanted to share a story that is impacted my life about wall building. And I'm not talking about putting walls up for protection so much, although this was what it was for, but many of you might know Nehemiah, but Nehemiah was around in the 5th century BC, in 445 BC, and he was a cupbearer to the king at the time. And Nehemiah was from Israel, and the city of Jerusalem had been laying in ruins for 100 years, and nobody had done anything about it. And when his people came back and told him the status of things, because he hadn't been there, because he was serving the king in Persia, he was heartbroken, and he had a desire in his heart to go and rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. And the king saw that, and the king gave him all the resources he needed because he saw the desire in his heart that was so great that he wanted to build these walls up. And so Nehemiah went, and every resource was given to him, and the people in the community went with him. Everyone in the community picked up tools and started building on these walls. And it got to a point where they even had to put weapons in one hand and tools in the other because there was an enemy that wanted to destroy them because they didn't want to see those walls rebuilt. But because of Nehemiah's desire and getting engaged and stepping out, they were able to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem in 52 days. 52 days. I mean, it takes us how many years to build a tunnel? What was that Boston project? Everybody know about that? I mean, it took how long? In Aspen, it takes us 6 months to get a permit. I mean, come on. Let's get our hands in. Let's pick up the tools. Let's get our hands engaged and just build healthy community. So, anyway, better together. Building community together, stronger and healthier. Thank you, guys.
I feel like after hearing those last two stories, we should take BTalks on the road. So I'm going to talk to U.S. Bank and Shaw Construction in Willetstown Center, and I know this great game park in Africa. And so the next one of these will be maybe in Africa. So keep your fingers crossed. Our last two inspiring speakers this evening are going to come up together. These two ladies have adventure in their hearts. So please welcome to the stage Betina Infante and Summers Moore. Come on up, ladies.
In case I say something. Whew. Okay, I'm going to try to keep it short. Let me get this. So, I spent the last 20 years working for development agencies, private sector abroad, mostly in Eastern Europe and Asia. But hands down, the most interesting place, the most magical place I ever went and lived in was Mongolia. So I'm going to try to give you a little glimpse of that epic adventures. We were there for 10 years. It was monumental. So I arrived in the dead of winter from Indonesia in 2006. It was brutal. -40 was mind-boggling cold. If you went outside, your eyelashes froze together. It was like nothing I've ever experienced before. I remember driving from the airport to our new home and thinking, Bill told me that this was just like Bulgaria, and it's in fact radically different. It's a place totally frozen in space and time. And I thought, oh boy, what did we get ourselves into now? We did settle in. I thought it was going to be a short adventure. It ended up being a very long 10-year, 11-year epic adventure, which continues today. Ulaanbaatar, where we lived, is a city. It's the only significant city in Mongolia. It's home to 50% of the population. Mongolia is this giant country, as probably many of you know, the size of all of Western Europe. And then you've got, boom, 3 million people in there, and 50% of them are sitting in this city, which is built for basically 500,000. So it's flanked by these rugged mountains and these Ger districts, which are these tiny little plots of land with yurts in these little plots from all the people that are migrating from the countryside to the city for a better life. So for me, it was a city of just radical paradoxes. You know, it's got this heartbreaking poverty. It's got enormous opportunity, but then it also has this phenomenal wealth that it's mind-boggling. It's surreal. Like, how can Louis Vuitton be sitting in the middle of Ulaanbaatar? That makes no sense. And at the time that we were there, they boasted selling more handbags from this store per square meter than anywhere else in the world. And I thought, no way. How the heck is that possible? And so it's a paradox. It's also the coldest capital in the world, and it's very, very, very toxically polluted because all those people living in the Ger district surrounding the city burn anything and everything that they can to stay warm at -40. So it's tough, and I'm sure you guys are now thinking, like, why the heck would you ever go live there? But outside of this crazy, crazy city, there's this magical, absolutely unbelievable country with beautiful people. The people are tough. They're incredibly resilient. They're proud of their heritage. They're proud of their country, their culture, and they're incredibly generous. So we were welcome there. We were there working with the Asia Foundation. We were welcome there and learned a lot from this culture. That was the countryside, and here, our introduction to Mongolia were all the young professionals at the Asia Foundation. All of these young people lived in UB, they were UB natives, and they hadn't really ventured to the red taiga in the north or to the eagle hunters in the west, but they introduced us to the culture, and we thought, okay, well, we need to venture. That's our purpose. We're here to do development, but we need to learn, and everything we learn needs to feed into what we do. So we ventured. We ventured to the north to learn about an ancient tribe called the Satan. The Satan are the reindeer herders, or the reindeer people, who live in the most remote northern part of Mongolia. And we were lucky enough to have a friend who had a camp, and he had been studying the Satan for many, many years. Hopefully one day we'll have him standing here. And he gave us the privilege of visiting his camp and introducing us to this phenomenal culture, these reindeer people. There are about 40 families left. They came down to welcome us with their reindeer, of course. For me, this was almost like a fairy tale. Here it is, our kids riding reindeer. I thought, this is surreal. Like, who gets to experience this? Not only that, but our son at that time, who's all of 11, ends up getting invited to to guide, he's a very good horse rider, to guide a trip for U.S. students coming the following year. And of course, to be able to guide the trip, he had to go on the expedition himself. And so they did. Off they went with the Tuvan Satan warriors to, you know, we were just like, where are they going? Well, 2 weeks later, we did go up and we did meet them. And as we approached this phenomenal area in the very most northern part of Mongolia, bordering Siberia, this is what you see. Did you see that? It's a teepee. This tribe is living in the most harshest, coldest part of Mongolia in a teepee with their reindeer. And you just sort of say, how? How do you survive here at -50? I was barely surviving -40 in UB. And you realize they're a community, they stick together. The reindeer are very much a part of their community structure. You know, like we would have pets, maybe dogs, but there it's reindeer. They live off the reindeer, they use them for transport, they use the milk to make food, and it's surreal. They're a little connected because they have a satellite dish. But here they are, and imagine sleeping there at -50. It's almost impossible. It's fairy tale-like, you know. When I had never seen a reindeer until I went here, and of course, when you look at a reindeer, you're like, oh my God, it's like when we were kids. Like, this is the real deal, and it's phenomenal. The kids are playing with the reindeer like we play with our pets. They're playing with reindeer. And as we went, of course, to pick up our son, and it took, you know, as I saw this young herder boy approaching me, it took me about 2 minutes to figure out, oh my God, it's our son. He's wearing traditional Mongolian wear, and of course is coming to greet us. And at this point, you know, I'm looking at, oh, sorry, let's not go there yet. Looking at him thinking, what a magical experience. You know, I am absolutely positive that he's an incredible bike rider today because he rode those reindeer. That's it. So when we were in Mongolia, we took every opportunity, every holiday, every minute we could to venture, to learn, to be immersed in the culture, and to use what we learned to feed back into the development work that we were doing. We didn't want to be there kind of like as expats living in a bubble. We really wanted to be immersed. So we ventured also to the West. I'm sure you've all seen the movie, but the West it's the land of just huge valleys. It's home to the eagle hunters. So unlike the rest of Mongolia that is primarily Buddhist, the eagle hunters are Kazakh Muslim minority. And so they welcomed us to their home, different from the gers and the yurts that we saw. They live in mud huts. They opened their house to us. We slept on the floor. They cooked for us. And they took us eagle hunting, which was amazing. So as we're riding from here up these huge valleys to the mountains, and in fact, like in Mongolia, the sense of space is kind of bizarre because you're looking from here to there, and you're sure you can ride to that mountain in an hour, and then you ride an hour, and the mountain's still way over there, and you ride again, and it's just like, it's just huge, vast valleys in space. So we finally did make it to this mountain where these eagle hunters were going to show us how they hunt. And the interesting thing here is that you see how he has the eagle perched on a wooden stump, if you will. These animals are like 30 to 40 pounds, and they're carrying them on their arms as they ride like the wind across these valleys. They're very, very proud of what they do. They wear their ornate Kazakh wear. And then we get to the top, and the eagle hunter says, you know, everybody stay back. We're going to allow the eagle to look. And, you know, you're looking out at this space, and you're going, there's nothing out here. There's nothing here. But it doesn't take the eagle long to give a sign. The eagle hunter gets up and lets him fly. Within minutes, this eagle caught this Pallas. It's a Pallas cat. I know it's sad, but this is what they do. And he caught this Pallas cat, which is a phenomenally beautiful animal, and they, again, put the mask back on the eagle and calm him down, take him home, and his reward is they skin the cat. His reward is that he gets to eat the innards. Again, it's an incredible culture, incredibly colorful and hospitable culture. They were very generous to let us in. And I put this here because this is our daughter, who at this point is 9, and just to show you the perspective of how big this bird is compared to a child. When the eagle hunter, he kept saying, no, keep the children back. And I was like, right, keep the children back. But of course, children do what they do. And they were kind of scampering around the rocks. And at one point, one of the eagles, luckily this didn't happen to my children, but just swooshed down, landed on the back of one of our friends, and began pecking at his head, which fortunately he still had his riding helmet on. So it was on his back, pecking at his head. But I was thinking, wow, the force of nature, like this is a land of survival of the fittest, really. I mean, the eagle just attacked one of our kids. It's incredible. So they learned an enormous amount from those experiences, and that was one of the key purposes of our travel, not just to be able to learn from the culture. While we were there, we did a lot of meaningful work, not just adventure, which is really fun. We worked for the Asia Foundation in Development, and then we had our own public relations and marketing company, and then now we created our own brand of luxury textiles, which is called Hangai Mountain Textiles. We produce all our textiles in Mongolia so that the knitters and weavers with whom we work benefit from that in-country activity. I mean, fun fact is that most of Mongolia's cashmere, and they're the second largest producer in the world, goes straight to China, and very little is left for local producers to benefit from. So we would like to be able to produce with them. Last but not least, the takeaway from all of this is, when I was there, now we're blessed to be in Basalt and adventuring with all of you. I come back here and I realize the one thing I really want to do is preserve our kind of nomadic spirit, our spirit to travel and have meaning with our travel. And it really, really resonated. I realized we need to do this when my daughter is a graduate of CRMS, and she was giving a speech. And I just want to read one sentence from her speech, because that was the one sentence that really confirmed that our time in Mongolia was so, so worthwhile. She said, Mongolia has profoundly shaped who I am and ignited endless search for adventure. Adventure is experience, and experience is knowledge. Adventure builds your personal story, and the most important thing in life is to have meaningful stories to share. Thank you. Last but not least, we saved the best for last. Summer's more.
Is it on? Are we switching chairs?
Yeah, switch.
I was wondering why I was sitting there the whole time awkwardly trying to figure out where to look. As we practiced twice, you will not know that, but we did practice twice. Once with no photos, once with no people. Now you're all here and we have photos. And the last time I practiced, I forgot to look at the photos, which is funny because I'm a photographer. So you would think that I could connect photo with word and be so beautiful in this incredible talk tonight, but I'm a little nervous, to be honest. But I'd like to start off by thanking everyone in the room for everything you do and your bravery and your kindness in listening to our story. And why am I here? Probably the question you're all scratching your heads about. I traveled with the Infantes to Mongolia this summer. Why, you might ask? I asked myself that a few times. As my hand shot up in the air when Betina said, hey, do you want to go to Mongolia? Backstory. I don't go far. I don't do much. I suppose I didn't. But there was something that has changed and shifted in my life.
and my hand shot up, and there it was, and there I was stuck, but in a happy way. And I think adventure is sticking your hand up in the air, and once your hand's up in the air, it's all over. You're done, you're in, you're good. And I spoke with my friend Aki, who also brilliantly stuck her hand up in the air. So we all went, and there were 12 of us, I think, in tow. There were writers and bloggers and myself with a camera, and I was so psyched because I could bring my children, and I asked them, and they kindly said yes, they would come. And I taught them, well, I didn't teach them, but someone taught them how to use a drone, so they had purpose as well. And I was just honored, and you know, Mongolia, China, fly over, do your thing. Like, I don't even have a thing. But I thought maybe I can make something happen out of this, because I do love my camera and I do love beautiful things. And Betina had told me two things in the States before we left, and she said, Sums, you know, things don't happen the way they're supposed to in Mongolia. And I thought, well, of course not. How hard could that be? Well, that was proven time and time again. Also, she said the land is peppered with animals. And as a visual person, I also could kind of imagine that, but actually it was blown away in my head when I got there. We were challenged by trying to get to a yak festival. The first day, a 16-hour drive, and we were introduced to the Sums Things Happen. The first 45 minutes, we broke an axle on the car, and we were on the side of the road, and we were introduced quickly to the world of Mongolian travel. The roads disappeared, the cars broke all the time, but there was never, ever not a view, not a kind person, not something that just makes your heart stop. And as a photographer, I was kind of out of my mind. Kind of is an understatement, because the poor driver of our car really, you know, didn't want to deal with me, because a lot of times I would scream, stop. And he was like, oh God, not again. Like, no. And he was very kind to me. Everyone was very kind to me, I suppose. But he stopped a few times, and we saw the most amazing things. And I don't know, I think it's adventure, I don't know. I mean, magic, you tell me. God almighty. So Betina would say, oh, it's 3 hours, this drive today, only 3 hours. Well, that was just crap. It ended up every time we'd all want to believe, like we were all into the fact that we were going to believe. 3 hours, nothing, cakewalk, 7. 3 equals 7 when you're in Mongolia, you know?
3 Mongolian hours.
Yeah, exactly. It's a different time thing, as well as the vastness of it. And Betina kind of touched on that when she said, things are far, things are close, you know. They weren't close at all. There's nothing close. And I know distances. I know how to add. I'm a clever woman. But you get to Mongolia, and one day, Betina's husband, Bill, said, oh, we're going to Mount, pronounce it incorrectly, Atkantangar. And Summers, get out of the car, we're here. And I thought, where are we, Bill? And he said, there is the mountain. And I said, what? And I guess it was the mountain, and I guess it was a big, big mountain out there, but it looked like a little anthill. But it was simply the distance of what it was, and I tried to be brave, and I tried to take a lot of photographs of it, because it was the big mountain. And it really kind of wasn't, in my opinion, but I have a picture of it somewhere. I mean, none of these, I didn't bring it tonight because I just didn't want to. So, you know, in that same spot, we were in the same spot, and we're just beholden to this gorgeous mountain, which no one really paid attention to. And the next day we were to take a hike, and Bill said, hey, we're just going to go up there. And I was like, I'm not a hiker, but I'm fit. And so we took off, and it was supposed to be, you know, just a little up to the top. It took literally an hour and a half to get even near the bottom of the thing that you were just about, you know, to get to the top of. And it was surreal. The land, it looks so calm and beautiful, but it's pocky, and It's brilliant. It's untouched. It's so freaking cool. So we went a walking, and Betina is also afraid of spiders. Oh, God. There were these huge rocks that we had to stumble over and climb up. And out of the corner of your eye, you'd see these, reflections of light off of something. And I'm like, oh, jeez, a spider web? Okay, so if a spider web is this big around, the hell is making that? And it's just huge bird-eating spiders everywhere. Like, truly everywhere. For an arachnophobe, like, are you kidding me? Like, and I can't turn around because it's really far. And we just kind of had the time of our lives getting up that thing. So adrenaline, being an adventurer, not saying no to things, I suppose that's what you do. And now I will do it all the time. I will do it a lot. And I did it there. The peppering of animals, I hope you're watching as we do. These scenes that came across. All right, so this is an example. This is a really good example of driving along the car. It's kind of getting a little rainy. We're trying to get to a gear camp. Everyone's crabby, and the car in front of us zooms by this, right? Zooms by the scene. And I was like, are you kidding me? Stop. And the man knew better, and he stopped that car, and I got out, and the other cameras, the big boy cameras, were in the other car, cleverly. But I did have the iPhone, and I don't work for Apple or any of that, but I could, because the product that I had in hand took these photos, and it was what I had, and it was what I did, and it is heart-stopping. It is taking your life, it is sticking your hand up in the air and getting this. And you see this, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Is this scripted? Like, what? Pinch. Do the pinching. Someone. Are you kidding me? No one pinched me. It just went on and on and on and on and on, and it was phenomenal. And so horses, those of you that know me know that horses do hold a really, really important part in my life. And as we were planning, or Bill was planning this trip, Bill and Betina were planning, and they said, oh, Sums, you're a horse girl. That's neat. There's this reserve there, and they have these cool horses. I don't know if you'd know them, it's very kind of special. They're Przewalski horses. And I thought, oh, my God, Przewalski horses. A lot of history that comes into this that I'm not going to bore you with, but Przewalski horses are the original horse of ever and always. And to have them all in one spot, I was like, what? Oh, this is royal. I wanted to go and see those horses. And Bill said, you got it. We'll plan that in the trip, and it'll be kind of near the end of the trip on the western end. We'll drive all the way across. It'd be so cool. Well, we were driving there, and there's no roads. Like, all of a sudden, you, lose your road, and you're just off in the middle of nowhere. And then you're super in nowhere. And then people are kind of staring at people like, hey, how's that gas looking? Oh, not so much. No, our car doesn't have much gas. How about you? Not so much. So you get, and you're trying to be brave and clever because you're an adventurer, and you're not scared at all. Yeah, until, there's no road, there's all sand, and the drivers are so confused, too. They don't even know, and you can tell acting, and I could tell there was some serious acting going on. So somehow we all finally kind of said when you have enough, you say when. And we all said when, and we stopped the cars. And I remember Bill came up to me, and he looked at me, and, that's a little scary. But he comes up to me, and he goes, this is all your fault. And I thought, what a way to go, though. What a way to go, because I'll take it. You know what? This is all my fault. Let's go see these horses, whatever. Turns out we were kind of close-ish, and we made it. So, woohoo, celebrate that night. But we went to the reserve where they began with 12 horses, and way back when, and then a woman from France imported more horses, and there was this incredible movement, 12 and then 22. They're up to 77 on this land right now. There they are. That's them. Okay, so tell me about this. Are you kidding me? Do you see little dinosaurs running around? I kind of do. But Okay, so I had Norwegian fjords, which are pretty close to these guys, but they're so cool. I lost my mind again on this trip with these horses. And of course, you've got 12 other people that, are not so horsey, but they were patient and they sat in the grass and waited for me to click many photographs. And I just think that you don't know what life is going to bring you. You don't know what your purpose is if you have a purpose. Oh, God's sake, I don't think I have much of a purpose. But I do know what I like, and I do know what I feel, and I think feeling things is just vital. I want to help these horses somehow, so I want to use my photography, if I can, to do that kind of thing. And I just think the purpose hits you and finds you when you're ready for it, right? And as we prepared, I know you guys are being so patient. Thank you. Almost done. I just want to say that we prepared and we thought about this. What are you going to say? How are you going to tell people? It's impossible to tell you what Mongolia is. But it is possible to tell you what adventure is. And I think sticking your hand up in the air will serve everyone every time. And probably everyone in this room knows that. But maybe it's about me right now. And as we were preparing, Betina said, I've talked to my friend. He takes photographs. He's amazing. Here's this email. And I was like, that's neat. That's super cute. Well, I scanned the email, and I was like, whoa, those are profound words. I don't have the series Profound Words, but he did. So I'm going to read these profound words to you and hope that they touch you as well as they touched me. I just get the right side of the paper. Let's start here. Maybe not. I don't know. Christ. All right. Sorry. These opportunities are rare indeed and carry a certain degree of risk that Western civilization can no longer accommodate. I buy that. This is the real part. Listen up. Real experience comes to those who revel in the sublime, in equal portions of awe and beauty, fear and rapture. I wish you all the best, and I thank you so much for listening. And adventure. Go for it.
Here is to all of us raising our hand in the air and having adventures. Thank you for coming tonight. The Spicy Boys are going to play some more music for us. There's more food. The bar is open. Hang out, get to know your community. Enjoy the evening. Thank you all.